Hello guys, and welcome to chapter 6, where I will be showing you through my entire process from sketching to line art to coloring. This particular video will be about the sketching process, and I'll show you a couple of ways I might go about it. Now, the first thing I want to talk to you about is canvas size. I generally don't work with very big canvases. My maximum width or height are usually at around 1000 to 1500 pixels, sometimes 2000 pixels in width or height. The reason I don't like working with big canvases is because smaller resolutions force me to spend less time on details and sort of have a better image of the bigger picture of the drawing as I work on it. I also find smaller canvases to be less tiring in general. Now, this isn't to say that working at lower resolutions is a good thing. If you're interested in printing things or interested in having super high quality, HQ work, then you might want to go for a slightly bigger resolution, like around 3000 pixels. But for all intended purposes, I will be mostly working in the interval between 1000 pixels and 1500 pixels. For comic work, as a side note, my width is generally just 1000 pixels. When thinking about what I wanted to do for this particular drawing, I decided to go into my landscape folder, so the folder where I've got all the photographs that I've taken and thought I might use in a drawing. I picked one, and based on that, I came up with just this really basic layout, this really basic drawing idea, which will serve as a demonstration for this. For the sake of keeping things concise, I won't be working on a full body. I will sketch the full body so you see how I would go about it, but it's going to be like a waist up sort of shot. Those tend to be the ones that are faster and work better in terms of composition, storytelling, etc., or at least in the majority of cases. So I've set my layer to sketch mode, meaning that all my lines will be drawn in black, but they will show up in light blue. This is something that I don't always do. Sometimes I do sketch in black or just a different color, depending on really what color I've got selected, but I will eventually turn the layer into a sketch mode when it's time to do the line art anyways. The first thing that I tend to sketch is the general head shape, using the ear shape as a sort of guideline to the rest of the face. Then I draw sort of like face guidelines and adjust it until I'm satisfied with it. If I'm working on a headshot, I will just start with the eyes. I won't even sketch the face shape, but for anything that's bigger than that and encompasses more of the body, I do generally start with the shape and get to the expression later. Then it's a mix between creating outer shapes and inner shapes and action lines. As you can see here, I'm still trying to think about what the pose is going to be, and I kind of mix simplifying shapes with trying to get some detail in them. I tend to simplify hands by creating the outline of the hand first sometimes, instead of going into the joints or fingers or sketching them like that. I also mix clothing aspects with body aspects. So as you can see, I don't really practice what I preach when I told you about drawing the whole body underneath, when I told you about simplifying the shapes first, creating the action lines first, etc. However, it is because I've been doing this for a long time, so intuitively I will know where things stay, I will know where, how proportions are, so I don't feel the need to fully plan things out and work on them from a simplified perspective. I tend to flip the canvas a lot, both in the sketch phase and in the line art phases, just to make sure that things are balanced and look okay from both sides. Because I knew that I was going to work on a waist up shot, I didn't expand the canvas yet, but I will expand the canvas later on in this video just to show you how I would go about sketching the whole body. So now I'm gonna go into the details of the face. I generally start with the eyes, and I like to create this sort of hatching effect for the nose before drawing the actual nose. So just to get an idea of where the nose position is. Generally draw upper eyelid first and the iris where it's pointing at, just a general idea, and then the lower eyelid. The mouth is usually just to get an idea where the mouth is as well, the position, etc, etc. I tend to add just enough detail to know that things are in the right place. As you can see, I added these sort of crossed lines on the face. That's because I'm trying to look at where the jaw shape is and sort of like the cheekbone effect. Again, this is me thinking about what the anatomy is underneath and how I can shape it. Some of these lines might be replicated in the line art because I like that effect. In terms of hair, I generally stick to the overall shape of the hair or the hair strands. This is sort of the stage at which you can draw each strand very separately because it's not gonna bleed into the line art. It's, it helps you get a better overall shape if you go into detail and create different strands, but you can also just do the outline. Some more details on the clothes. This was the time when I decided that I wanted to sketch the whole body, just to include that in a demonstration. So I went edit, canvas, change canvas size, and I increased it. I just dragged it down a little bit just so I can include the legs in there. This is very similar to the process when I was designing V's body. By the way, in terms of brushes, I'm now using the Artemis Hard brush, so it's the very pencil-y brush. In terms of sketching brushes, I think you should go for a brush that you're very comfortable with, even if that's not the brush you're going to use for line art, and use it at a large size so that you can add detail, but never too much detail, so you don't get distracted adding too much detail. When it comes to legs or specific arm positions, I do prefer to actually draw the anatomy underneath and then add the clothes. That I still do. So the next thing I'm going to do once I've got a sketch that I'm satisfied with is use a model to create that position. Because sometimes I don't do the sketch, especially when I'm working in the comic, I will jump straight into the model, and that's what I want to demonstrate here. So I'll just show you how I would pose the model to get the position that's similar. Then I will sketch over it and we can see what the comparison is between a sketch from a model and a sketch just done from scratch. Just posing the model as I've shown you last video. There's a lot of very awkward in-betweening when you're trying to get a model to recreate a pose that's very natural, because the model will always look awkward in certain angles and certain positions. So you do need to have an idea of the pose that you want before jumping into posing your model. For instance, here I've got the sketch behind the model, so I am basing myself off the sketch whether I like it or not. One thing that really frustrates me is trying to get the arms to be in the right position, and the legs occasionally, but mostly the arms, because I'm not a big fan of the arm proportions in these models. So generally I just do an approximation and then draw over it, which I've mentioned in a previous video. I'm gonna go in to adjust the lighting a little bit. In this case, there really isn't a lot of need to adjust perspective because the drawing itself isn't going to require it. Now, if I'm using a 3D model, chances are I will be drawing the line art directly onto the model, unless I couldn't be bothered to pose it and it's an extreme pose, or just a very complicated pose. However, for the purposes of demonstrating the differences between sketching from a model and sketching normally, I'm going to sketch over the model this one time. I will be cutting the drawing back to the original layout, so the waist up, so that I don't really spend time drawing the legs when they're not necessary for now. I turned the model into a sketch layer, which makes it very blue. And I'm gonna start sketching over it. Now, I do recommend that if you use models, you attempt to sketch over them. You know, again, it's never gonna match what you want 100%. So it's worth seeing if you can sketch from the model without being too biased by what's underneath. I'm not using a sketch layer now because the model itself is in a sketch layer, so it might get confusing to have too much blue. I'm still trying to use some face guidelines, you know, the jawline, etc. And as you can see, I'm a lot more comfortable just going straight into drawing the clothes. You know, I don't have to draw a body underneath because the body's already there. When I get to the arms, again, I'm taking some creative license because I don't like the way they're posed or structured. Also, another thing you can notice is that I don't do a lot of long lines when I'm sketching. It's all in fast strokes. That helps me get a general shape better. So yeah, that is the sort of final result from sketching from a model and sketching freestyle. When I sketch from a model, I generally keep the model underneath the sketch at all times, even when I'm doing the line art. Mostly because having the model underneath the sketch makes me forget certain shapes or certain lines that would help me otherwise. So I'll keep the model there in case I need a particular shape, like the head shape, for instance. I didn't draw the head shape because the head shape is on the model. If I compare the two sketches, I personally prefer the freehand one. I wouldn't say that the model one looks too bad, like I would still be able to use that and tweak that to make it a bit more dynamic, but in general I think it's a lot more fun and it's a lot more freeing to try and freestyle whenever you can. You know, if you don't have a big time constraint, you can use the model to help you out, but freestyling is just more fun in my opinion, and I think a healthy mix of both is necessary. For this particular drawing, I will be sticking with the sketch that I freestyled and I won't use the one that I did from the model. Next video we'll be going on to the line art, and I'll be doing the line art with the brush that I'm currently using for most things, and then doing it with a couple of other brushes just so you can see what different effects you can get. See you then!